everyone, I'm Roz. You said you liked my quilt, Happy Hearts, so I told you I'd do a tutorial. Forgive me for being nervous, I've never done this before. So right here on this board is your material list, what I used for this. And the name of this fabric line was from Riley Blake, and it was called Twice as Nice. You know, as far as quilting, I like to be, just creative because everybody does the same quilt, they use the same fabrics, so I like to kind of do my own thing. And so this is what I did for this particular one. So the first thing you need is a layer cake. And, a layer cake is 10 by 10, for those of you who don't know that. And on the back of your layer cake, there's instructions as far as how to cut it. And that's always really useful to know, okay, but not what I used. So you take your layer cake and you open it up and you drool over it and you pet it. And then you look at it and you see what kind of colors you have. So what we need to do for this particular quilt is to get like colors together. What I wanted in my effect was to have like a red heart and the blue heart or the turquoise heart and a little beige over there. So I looked through my layer cake and I got 3 pieces for each color. In this particular layer cake we have blacks and oranges and some turquoise. Gotta love the turquoise. Green, and then this beigey kind of color. So I picked out 3, and I sort of kind of went with the orange. Okay, so I have 3 colors. Close enough. It's however you want to make your quilts. So I thought these would go really well together. So you take out your 3 sheets, and I would divide all of them. You take 3 greens, put it aside, so divide it all out in the beginning, okay? So you kind of know how many blocks you're going to have. I used most of the layer cake to make, I don't even remember, I think it was 5 by 4, so 20 blocks here. And then I used my leftover blocks for placemats. And I used my scraps to make these side placemats. So I had 4 extra blocks, and I got 4 placemats. Okay, so this is what we do. Once you divide your layer cake into all your 3s, you're going to, they all come all nice and put together. They're all cut the same size. You're going to take your layer cake and you're going to divide it right in half. So 10 divided by 2, 5. This is my favorite ruler. It's a 6 by 12. And this one is Olfa, so you can see through it. So I just line up. And some people have a hard time, like where do you cut with these pinked edges? I kind of go right at the bottom of the valley. So the edge is like this, and I just cut from the valley. But as long as you make all your cuts the same, you should be okay. So you cut those right in half, and now you have 2 5 by 10s. And the reason why I want you to cut this in 3s, in 3 sections, is because you need those 3 sections to make up your heart. I have 3 different fabrics here. That makes up my heart. So you take one section, and you're going to divide this in half. So now you're going to have 2 5 by 5s, which are also known as charms. Because if you notice on your material list again, I asked for you to get 2 charm packs, and that's of your background color. I think Kona now has solids and charms, so you can get white, charms, or whatever color you want. It doesn't have to be white. As a matter of fact, white shows everything as far as I'm concerned, so next time I have a different color. So, so now I have 2 charms, and I have still my 5 by 10. When you add these 2 together, when you sew these 2 together, you're going to lose that 1/2 inch. So this is now, when you sew these 2 together, you're going to have a section that's 9.5. So we have to make our bottom section the same as our top. So that's going to be 9.5 as well. So you're going to trim your 5x10 piece now into 9.5. Right, so you're going to set this aside and we're going to work on these. What I did now was I took one of my charms packs, several of them, and I cut them into squares of 1 3/4. So you need a square for 1 3/4 by 1 3/4 for your sides here. See, they're 1 3/4 by 1 3/4. Now, if you need to be everything perfect, you can draw a line, a diagonal line on the back of your squares. I don't necessarily do that because perfection is not my strong point. So you take your 1 3/4 by 1 3/4, and I did that because I wanted to have a little bit of that roundness. You get that feeling of it being a heart if you leave so much. If you use a bigger square, you're going to get a pointy heart. So I found that 1 3/4 was great. So if you don't want to chop up your charm, you can also use yardage. For this demonstration, I didn't have a background color that I liked in a charm pack. So I just took some yardage and I chopped it up for what I needed. So in this case, I cut off a 1 3/4 strip and cut it up. Okay, so now you're going to sew your 2 pieces on both sides, and you're going to do all 6 pieces. So once those are done, they'll look like this. All right. You always iron to set your seam. I cut 1/4 inch. You all know how to do that. And then you iron it back so you have your 1 heart. Okay, so once you have your hearts, you sew them together and you have the top of your heart. Now for the bottom, we take our 9.5 inch square, our 9.5 inch by 5 inch piece, and we're going to put on these corner triangles. So we know that the width is 5 inches. So I take 1 charm or 1 5-inch square. Now this time, because it's a little bigger, I definitely draw my line on the wrong side of the fabric from end to end diagonally. And I do that on all my charms, or as many as you're going to need. However many hearts you're going to do. You need 2 for each heart. So then you sew it on from diagonal to diagonal. Now on this, what I do is, once I sew one on, I flip it around, okay, and I sew down again on the other side. See, here's your point of your heart, right? And I'm sure most of you do this already, but you sew down your diagonal, flip it around, and then sew down this side. This way you have a scrap half square triangle. I'll show you what I mean. Once you cut this, and you cut that right in half, this is your half square triangle. And these are the scraps that I made the placemats out of. You see? And you're going to have 2 here, and you're going to have so many leftover half square triangles that you're going to want to use them for different things. As a matter of fact, I'm going to detour a little bit into that half square triangle thing. Once you sew the 4 of them together, you get a half square triangle. You get a pinwheel block. Okay. So here's 2 pinwheel blocks, and then you can chop these down any way you want to chop them down. I needed for my placemats 5-inch squares, so I just came along here and cut 2.5 inches. I measured 2.5 inches from the center and cut off the extra. And I went all the way around until I got this. And there's my 5-inch charm. But let's say you're doing other projects and you want something even smaller. Kind of a cool thing. If you take this, alright, I'm just putting it in here to show you, okay, and you cut this right in half on all sides, okay, you get your little pinwheel block, plus you get these extra 2-inch blocks. You get your white out of here, okay, and you get your 2-inch color block from this, and then you get these half square. You get this one will be your pinwheel block, and then you get another half square triangle, and you can go even lower, even smaller, making another little pinwheel. Anyway, if you have any questions with anything I'm talking about, or you need me to clarify anything, you can email me at quilt311@gmail.com, below. Or you can look on my blog, Creative Quilting, and that's on the Blogger. And I'll answer any questions, because I'm just trying to, it was so much easier to show you rather than write this all down, how I did this. Alright, so let's go back to our heart. So, if you don't care about your, leftover, scraps, just sew right down the middle of the diagonal. You're going to fold this over, iron, and you have to do that first before you add your second one on here. Fold over, iron, okay? And you cut off underneath. So you have a nice flat piece. So then what you do, you sew the top to the bottom. All my seams are 1/4 inch. And you have a heart. Alright? This is now a little different color scheme. I used like that light green. And these fabrics are from, it's called Sassy, from Sandy Jarvis. And I'm going to do something with this. I don't know yet, but I liked the light green with it. Yeah, it's 9.5 inches. You sewed this to this. This was 9.5 inches, and this was 9.5 inches. So your block is 9.5 inches, unfinished. It'll be 9 inches finished. What I did was, why reinvent the wheel? I went to a site that has all of the setting triangle formulas there and everything. If you want to figure it out yourself, that's great. But I just looked up the chart, and I have a link to the chart on my blog. Okay, again, that's Creative Quilting. But it's a 9-inch finished block. So my corner triangles, you only need 4 corner triangles. That block would be 7 1/4. And your side triangles, you cut 14-inch squares. So you need a 7 1/4 inch square and several 14-inch squares. So you need yardage for that if you're going to do a setting triangle, if you're going to do your hearts on point. You don't have to do your hearts on point. You can do them straight up and down. It's just as cute, and I think you'll love it just as much. But that's where you get your setting triangles from. And it depends on how many hearts you want to use. So that's all optional. This is your game. This is your creative way of going and expressing yourself. Okay, so in order to put in your little corners, your cornerstones, what I did, because I like to kind of try to cut corners, I used a honey bun, and honey buns are 1.5 inches. Okay, so but for these blocks, like I said, I didn't want to use white. I wanted to use my own fabric, so I cut strips, 1.5 inches. Okay, and then from the 1.5 inches, you need 9.5 inch strips. Okay. So 9.5 inch strips, and you sew them to the side. Once you set this out, because like I said, you don't know how many you're going to need till you set it out, okay? So you just sew on your side you know, 1.5 inch, you're going to have to add your quarter stones to the bottom. So quarter stones, what I did was, whatever was left over from my fabric, I cut out 1.5 inch squares. So whatever you have left over, whatever you want to use, you cut it out so that you actually use it. And I happened to have a bunch of these, so I cut it up, and that's what I used. You attach it, you sew it on the way you normally onto your 9.5 inch strips, and then they'll go on like this. And you'll have your little cornerstones. Okay? And I think that's it. Oh, for your, what I finally ended up doing, because I didn't show this in my picture, was I put on a piano key border, and I used a jelly roll. If you use a jelly roll and you do it this way, on point setting with, it's 5 by 4, so 20 blocks. I had exactly enough on the jelly roll to do a 6-inch border. It was exactly enough. I was kind of worried I didn't have enough when I was putting it on, but it worked. And then I used cornerstones of some fabric that I had. Of course, it was the same line. And you know, depending on how you want it to look, if it was for Valentine's Day, I might want to have put red cornerstones on here to just bring out the red. But again, this is for my friend, so I just want it to be a happy quilt. So I wanted to more stress the turquoise, so I used turquoise. And as far as for quilting, when I finally get this to quilt, I'm not doing, you know, I don't have access to a long arm. I could send it out, but I really don't have the money for that. So I'm going to quilt this on my domestic machine. I have a Juki that I love, has a nice big harp, and I'm going to use a circular sort of with swirls and points. And the reason I use a lot of points in my quilting, and when I finally get this quilted, I'll show you how it comes out, but is so that you have stopping points. When you use a domestic machine, you need to be able to stop so you can kind of move your fabric around. And so it's hard to just swirl. Okay, so I think I'm done. I hope that clarified everything. Like I said, if you have any questions, you can email me at quilt311 just write it down at gmail.com. And thanks for watching. I'm Roz.